Okay, here is example number 4. So the first thing we want to identify is the form, and in this case, it's vertex form. The reason I know that is because of those parentheses and then squared on the outside. Oops. And then I want to make a quick note to myself that this is going to be opening up. It is not reflected, and I can tell it's not reflected because that A value is positive. Okay, when we're dealing with vertex form, we want to identify our transformations. So each transformation, each number tells us something about how our quadratic is being transformed. And we always do our transformations left to right. So the first thing I see is that 1/4. That 1/4 tells me there's going to be a vertical shrink by 1/4. That -1 is inside, so that's telling me to go right 1. And then I see that +2, which tells me up 2. So now that I have my transformations ready, I'm going to create my original table. And as we talked about before, there's one number you have to use, and then the other one, we just want to make sure there's symmetrical points. So you have to use 0 because it's going to end up being your vertex, and 0 squared is 0. Then in the previous video, I used 1 and -1, but you don't have to use that. I could also say 2 and -2. I'm going to choose 2 and -2 as well because when I see that first transformation, I see it's 1/4. So that's the same thing as dividing by 4, which is going to be easier with an even number. So -2 squared is 4, and 2 squared is 4. So those are my beginning points, and I'm actually going to show you how to do this in a table just in case you prefer that way. So the first thing I'm going to do is that vertical shrink. Vertical shrink means I'm changing my y values. So I'm going to take each one of those y values and shrink by 1/4. So that would be 1, 0, 1. Then I'm going to go to the right one. Going to the right is going to change my x values. So if I start at -2 and go right 1, that's going to be -1. 0 to the right one is 1, and then 3. Oops. And then finally, I'm going to go up 2. And going up 2 is going to change my y's. And when I change my y's, I'm going to change the most recent y. So I'm not even looking at that original y. So up 2, up 2, up 2. And then my final points are going to be the ones on the outside. So if you prefer that table method, this is what you should get. Okay. And now I'm just graphing those points. So -1. And if you don't make it very clear, I would try to make it as clear as possible. 1 and 2. And then 2 and 3. And then I connect those to make my quadratic.